when you start talking about team culture, transformational coaching, building relationships, developing people, people first culture, or even just process, I think sometimes we think there is no room, no space to talk about winning. And yet, when we do that, I think we're often denying something that's actually fairly important to a lot of us in coaching or leadership. I mean, it's on our mind, right? We care about winning. We do care about results. And as Nate often says, winning is our objective, people are purpose. So it should be okay to talk about that objective. Now, in the second part of our conversation with NCAA Division One head coach Rob Dow, who, if you haven't listened to part one, I highly recommend you go back and listen to that. Right, like in my conversation with Rob, I really learned a lot about how a coach might navigate this polarity, like this challenge of being both about purpose and winning. And what I think is so powerful about his leadership and in this story of UVM in the last year is that he helped them move out of an identity of being the underdog, right? Like I see a lot of teams who seem to be close to the top, but they're never able to win the big one. And the one thing I notice is that they often consistently view themselves as their underdog. And I don't know if that belief helps them. Like I tend to think being the underdog like takes the pressure off, and that obviously can be helpful. But at the same time, the people who are winning championships, like they're typically the ones that believe they are the best, not the ones that believe, well, we're not supposed to or expected to win, so there's no pressure, right? We're the underdogs, right? So champions, I think, whether it's in team sports or even just championship, you look at tennis or golf, like champions, they embrace the pressure of being the best. And I think Rob really leans into that in a unique way as a leader with his team. And thus, I think that might be one of the keys or one of the things that he does different to other people that was able to help take them from being a high achieving underdog mid-major program, which there's some of those out there in a lot of the sports in college athletics in the States. He took them from there to being national champions. And it's really incredible. It's an incredible story. And so I'm excited to share the second part of our conversation with Rob Dow and how he did that. Welcome to the Coaching Culture Podcast. My name is JP Nurbin, and I'm joined by one of my co-hosts today, Nate Sanderson, for this interview. The mission of this podcast is to help you become a better leader and build a better team culture. To get the notes to this and every episode of the podcast, all you need to do is subscribe to the Team Culture Toolbox. It's the TOC Weekly Newsletter. There's a link in the details of this episode, or you can just head on over to tocculture.com to subscribe. Also, encourage you to check out Betsy Butterick's weekly newsletter. You can subscribe to that at Substack. It's just at Betsy Butterick.
Rob, the synergy here is interesting. I live in Cary, North Carolina. And last fall, I was actually at UVM. I was doing some speaking on campus prior to when you all won the national championship. I think you were at practice while I was there. So I know Church Street and that small community. And thinking about the fall, you talked at the beginning of the podcast about being in everyone's living room and this small community. And I know in the fall, your biggest competition isn't another school. It's the foliage and the leaf peepers. It's like vying for people's attention, the beauty that is Vermont in the fall. My question is, how do you own that privilege of being this example, being this source of meaning and connection in the community, and balance it so that it doesn't feel like pressure, right? Or do you allow the pressure to be present and then talk about what it is and what it isn't? Can you speak a little bit about how being this pillar in the community, which is such a privilege, without it tipping into a space where the guys in your program feel all this pressure to perform to, appease or make proud the people in the community?
Yeah. And that seeped in, and we acknowledged, that this isn't going to be easy. We're deciding what we're going to put on our ring. Okay. And it's such a big decision. Um, but we asked for input from our team. And one of the biggest things is like they want an elephant on the ring. And it comes from the expression of like, how do you eat an elephant? It's one bite at a time. Um, just take that day-to-day process and pressures, and it's gonna be hard, but we need to stick together, and all these, kind of, different things I've kind of alluded to. But being the Real Madrid of Burlington, and having the big crowds, and so forth. I think checking back around there and managing this has been, if you talk about maybe a social commentary that's around the group, recognizing the emotion and challenges, is that we try to teach the players, these men, that it's okay to be vulnerable. Maybe I'll start with me. We had a really challenging moment in 2022 with one of our players going missing. I was up throughout the night with this individual, and I try to do everything I can to help this person. And the person was going through a really difficult time. They got away from me. I don't know how, but this person got away with me, and then became missing. And then it was the town was looking for this one of our players, and I was so scared to show up back to within our team the next day. We were supposed to play UMass on the day, but we canceled the game because of this circumstance. That I was so scared to face the team and say that I failed. Like I didn't do my job. I let this player go. I talked to him about the night, how it went, but I broke down, and very emotional in front of my entire team, and said, "I did everything I could, guys." And there's several people that were still, on the team, up even to this time. On top of this, we have a team impact player who is a part of this, great Tufts program that places kids who have lifelong illnesses and within teams. And he's a very emotionally intelligent individual, and um, does a great job of like connecting with our players who are injured, which is a really difficult time because you're not included in training, you're not included in the daily activities. You're worried about something that is affecting what means so much to you as an athlete, and the perspective of having him around so much, and what this individual endures from the day to day from a physical aspect. His name is Max White. We actually have an award named after him that we give out every year for our team, for perseverance, grit, and overcoming adversity. These are the examples of, like, you're in college and you're going through this journey of growing from a boy to a man. Um, and that is not always, that doesn't have to be gritty all the time. It doesn't have to be in the gym, maxing out on your bench press, or, passing the fitness tests, but capacity, aerobic, anaerobic capacity to grow emotionally and handle everything else in life. We take a very intentional approach as coaches to allow players to be vulnerable, to
Can
be
you share a
vulnerable.
little bit more
Yeah,
about that, Rob? Because I think, just first off, just thanks so much for sharing that story. And I could just feel your emotion here, and just how even that story from 2022 still is heavy on you. And yet I'm curious, there's obviously, you just shared there's you being vulnerable, you opening up, you being authentic in that way with your players. How else do you feel your coaching staff does a good job of facilitating and creating space for young men to be vulnerable in a healthy way? Because I think there's not a lot of spaces that are being created for that type of vulnerability today.
yeah. Can think of a few different ways. One, we have a mentor-mentee program that starts in preseason, and ask me what we do not do. We do not match players up, by position in this match. We don't necessarily match it up like from a senior to a freshman on that standpoint. Um, we match them up like from an emotional standpoint, like what we think, what we know about that person, and how one person could support the other. For example, in one of the tough situations, I won't name the names, but two individuals, both lost their a parent around 12 or 13 years old. And they're best friends. They're best friends for life, just based on their match in preseason, I guess. We think about what could be the most difficult, challenging piece for them as a person in this journey, and we provide support. And also we have these like support networks throughout the community who want to give back to that, whether it's a German family or that wants to get to know a German player and cook a meal for them. The other piece, we know that homesickness is real. We're a destination college in Burlington, Vermont, and daylight in the wintertime is at a yeah, small. The quick story is like, I wish we had like 2 hours, but I'll just get into it. We had an Icelandic player come, our first Icelandic player in a long time. Iceland is a borders no country. No one else speaks their language. So this person came as a grad student into our program and got in an apartment and with a bunch of undergraduates and is sitting in his apartment alone while everyone went to class, and his classes were at night. 4 weeks into the season, guy's playing great. Starting center back, he just comes to the office and be like, "Coach, this has been a good experience, but I'm out of here at the end of the season. It's miserable." And we're like, "What? Why?" And what ended up happening? Well, what do you miss the most? Well, one, I I have nothing to do all day. Okay, that's fine. I have something to do. Um, Two, the locker room. I don't know sarcasm at all. Like everyone's laughing at these jokes and I'm fake laughing, but I have no idea what they're laughing about. Okay. Well, I don't know if I can teach you sarcasm and, American sarcasm so quickly and, within the next 4 weeks, but what else do you miss? It's like, you know what? I miss my sheep farm. I'm not kidding. I miss my sheep farm. I miss working on a farm. Well, we're in Vermont. We got farms. And we get him just a volunteer job at the farm down, it's literally down the street. And he ended up meeting some friends, from the farm, maybe even a girl. With other days, like we got him in the training room. He ended up becoming like the face of the training room. But we listened to that. So he made it. This guy set the tone. We recruited other Icelanders, the next year, like 3 or 4 of them, and he made it a tradition that every Sunday they would have a traditional Icelandic meal. So if you were in the dorms, you're going to get out of the dorms. You're going to have a family meal. It's going to feel like home. We're going to talk Icelandic. Um, and that tradition since 2016 has kept going. And now what it's turned into is European football in the morning, American football at night, where you're getting both, kind of international and domestic collaboration. And it's our job for one of our off-campus houses to host this every single Sunday. And that's broken, it's helped the homesickness, which is real. It's always going to be real. Um, Whether you're from Utah or from Iceland or, even from New England. And we're going to support each other.
Mm, mm. That's a really cool story. And it comes back to a word that you've used multiple times today, which is this inclusivity, that you're trying to make everyone feel like they belong, that they're included, and they can feel a connection. There's something I kind of want to pivot here and just kind of our remaining 10 minutes because there's something that I'm really curious on. Obviously people are going Vermont, right? Then when they hear this, like Vermont won the national championship. I know I saw that and was like, really, Vermont, right? That's interesting. So there is that whole like being the underdog, and yet you've been on this journey. It wasn't like completely out of nowhere. I mean, you've been competitive. A few years ago, you lost to Syracuse, and I remember, hearing you talk about this before, which was you could sense how complacency or contentment could creep into the team of like, oh, we got to the Elite Eight, we've overachieved. But I remember hearing you say this. You had to shake the underdog out of the program. Talk to us about shaking that underdog out of the program, because what I think that I have heard and what I'm hearing on other podcasts, you talk about this, is you weren't just focusing on championship behaviors. You wanted them to have a championship mindset. Like you wanted to instill a belief. So how did you shake the underdog out of Vermont.
One of the hardest jobs that we had to do, because it's within our hallways here, of all of our programs, that we're going to do more with less. We're going to surprise people, and all these pieces. But it's essentially, it's because um, we can't just be okay with losing, the last game in this unexpected, round that we're going to end in. But like, want the feeling of winning more than we don't want the feeling of losing. And you hear the ultra winners, of like the Kobe's and the Jordans, talk about how just like the serial winners, um, and those actions. I had to take it out of myself first, you know, and I told the team in 2023, that this is going to be our transition. Want the feeling of winning more than you don't want the feeling of losing, but I didn't act it. I did not. I don't know if I told the team this, and but my actions, my game plans, my intentional communication did not align with that mantra. And it was I did a
Can you
lot of
just unpack that real quick a little bit more?
yeah.
Because I know some coaches going, okay, am I guilty of this? Like, what did that, your communication, what did that look like?
When you talk about the every day, and how I talk to the players, how I talk about other programs, how um, I I sh- my whether I have nerves in my voice, I say we're going to sit back, at the top of our box, and be more defensive. Those are just examples. I was coaching with some fear. I said this, and everyone got behind it, but I did another thing. Um, Even more examples of not trying, like a younger player, sometimes, even though, this was the best matchup. But also, like, acknowledging, for that criticism versus, catching while being good, like, I continue to celebrate more than, um, drive them to look at their weaknesses, even to that point of how, when we do film, or how I talk to the team. Again, like, I'm introducing this for the first time, so, and haven't talked a ton about it, but how I transitioned, out of it in 2024, I really spent the whole off season conditioning myself to align my actions with my communication. Spending our whole off season on our attack and not even touching our defense, because we had so much confidence. I knew we could defend. When you say national championship, don't just say we're going to compete for a national championship, because the reality, like, everyone is trying to get in the NCAA tournament, trying to compete for a national championship. Right? We're going to win a national championship, and we're going to do this with national championship behaviors, and continue to exemplify those national championship daily behaviors. Got our players, and also when I said national championship, I caught myself in the media stuttering when to say we're going to win a national championship, like gasp, like, is this the right thing to say? Is this too much? But being extremely clear that this is the mission, and everyone had to be heading towards it.
Yeah, it's like
Um,
that conviction in your tone, and really, I love this because you're really trying to instill that belief. And if they sense the hesitation in you, that will only affect them. I'm working with a team here in Ireland, and they're going for a championship, the All Ireland champions here. And we have a thing that we say at their pre-practice, pre-game ritual, which is, we are the team to beat. They throw the F word in there because it's Ireland, so it's, we are the effing team to beat. But it is constantly saying that to a point where we can say it with conviction and belief, right? And having that,
we read the All Blacks book,
yeah,
Legacy,
yeah, like it's, yeah,
this summer, everyone. And I thought this was one of the things we did in the offseason. I thought we could teach our team how to be Vermont, do more with less, build a culture, like be consistent serial winners. What are those daily habits and actions? How do you talk about it? All these different things. So as much as like I wanted to, I'm not the every like I'm only the coach, a very small part of it, but the players had to also um, identify what meant most to them, about this book and about create these championship behaviors. So everyone read it, and we go up to J Peak, which is a skiing resort in preseason where no one's around. It's a great opportunity to bond and train for a week, and we spend a lot of time just having people say, what did this book mean to you? What connected to you? In terms of how you go about your journey, to achieve a national championship, and so many of those things. And that's where I think the elephant came from. I believe came from that book. But being blue-headed, like in the most difficult situations, not hitting the red zone, but keeping in the blue, where you can maintain your absolute focus and concentration, but also at the highest level of intensity. So many things. And we and it's funny, in the last few seasons, I introduced this mantra to the team, and you know little things make the big things, and there's other of them. I wanted the players to come up with one on their own, and it came from, we had 4 or 5 different ones of those, because we had really good ownership. That's what this team needed. Had a lot of leadership on it, and they also wanted to be authentic. They wanted to be able to say it and believe in it, and not for it just to be posted on the wall and feel, like they had to say it.
Yeah, I appreciate that, and I think that's a great reflection when we think about our team wanting to have championship behaviors or a championship mindset. It starts with us, right? It starts with us and our behaviors and our mindset, our belief. I know you've got a get match to get to here for the spring match, so we'll kind of end you with this, get you out of the door with this question, which is, when you think about you've talked about the difficulties um, of being a coach. You've talked about how it's time intensive, how there's that lack of control. There was actually a question that you reflected on for your own players, like when you were trying to partner them up with with a mentor. You were wondering what's most difficult for them in their journey. And I guess I'm going to flip that back to you. What's most difficult for Rob in this coaching journey?
I think there's a few different things. One, serving my family the way I should, and being a leader in the household. As a coach, you can get really talented with your communication, but when I hear my son tell me back, like, I'm only giving 50%, my 8-year-old son, I'm only giving 50%, you got to give 100% here. I'm like, "Well, okay, that's a good message. I'm not doing well enough. My son is feeling this, but I like what I like what you're thinking about. Am I doing enough? Am I educated enough? Um, have I kept up with this, modern day, I guess, methodology within the game of soccer to, continue to serve our team, but also take on this new role of like being a professional fundraiser, which is
Mm-hmm.
who who told, like, I don't know, 20 years ago, if someone told me I was going to be on the road asking people for money, because that feels different, that just feels different. I think we can have like the greater good mentality within here and say this is what's going to keep the program going, and this is just another challenge to overcome, and you got to take it on, and whatever it is. So that's the financial landscape of the NCAA is extremely challenging, and how do we keep up with that? But in full circle, coming back to us, is still maintain our identity, a value-based program that uh, is a brotherhood based. Uh, Work ethic is at the highest, importance. Doing the little things to make the big things, not allowing us to derail. from that
Mm.
identity is super important. It's again, it's going to be the hardest year of this program, but we're up for the challenge.
Well, I really appreciate those two things. The first being, it's one thing to be a great leader within our soccer teams, but the most important aspect is how we're a leader in the home. And then the second one of just really in the ever evolving and changing landscape of sports, especially collegiate sports in America. But any coach can relate to that, whether they're coaching anywhere in the world. It's just how do you maintain your identity, your core values when you're experiencing success, when you're experiencing defeat, and changing environments. So, Rob, you've been a very insightful and honest and authentic guest. So we just appreciate you coming on here and sharing your insights and your heart for leadership, coaching, and culture.
Yeah, I really appreciate I don't know, just the thoughtfulness here and allowing us to just talk about, um, you know, sharing of the ideas and sharing, um, you know, why we're so interested in changing humans, to be, um, you know, for them to achieve their goals and their dreams. So thanks for sharing that passion.
All right, that's it for our conversation with Rob Dow. It's incredible to think we're over 400 episodes in for the Coaching Culture podcast. It's just incredible. Like, people ask me, like, how have you been going at it all of these years? Well, I think there's probably two reasons. Like, one is like selfish. Like, I get to learn a lot for myself in my conversations with people in the podcast, like with Rob there. I mean, it's just great to have a conversation with him. However, I probably don't need a podcast to have good conversations. So really the most important thing is the stories that I hear. Not necessarily the stories from guests. It's more so the stories as I travel around the world and I'm facilitating coach workshops and giving keynotes. I mean, people will just come up to me and tell me they've been listening to for the podcast for nearly 10 years, or they just started listening the last year, but they went back and listened to all the podcasts. And I think they're crazy because it's like, all right, and now you're here to hear me talk some more, have you not heard my voice enough? So anyways, I just share that because I just want to say thank you. I didn't even realize there a few weeks ago that we hit a 400. And then someone told me, I was like, oh, that's interesting. Anyways, it's been an incredible journey. And I really appreciate all the people that have shared how the podcast has made a difference in their leadership and in their lives. And I think that one way that you can support the podcast, but not only the podcast, but it's just this work that we're trying to do with coaches, is to share the podcast with other people. So thank you for listening, and thank you for sharing the podcast with other leaders. I mean, it's such a powerful way to support not only the podcast, but like I said, but to be a part of the work that we're trying to do to help coaches become better leaders and build better team cultures.